Things that are in a permit application. A permit application includes address or directions to job site, local government approvals, fire department, planning department, historic commission, etc. Septic, sewer permit. This may be from a separate entity. Water district approval, permit, well. Soils report. Erosion control plan. Recycling plan. City engineering, sidewalks, etc. 2 or more sets of plans or prints. Energy code compliance information and/or calculations. Engineering calculations or wet stamp if required. Separate permits or fees required for plumbing. Things that are in a permit application continued. Permit application also includes separate permits or fees required for electrical, separate permits or fees required for mechanical, separate permits or fees required for specialty, drawings, check with jurisdiction for requirements, site or plot plan, drawn to scale, orientation, foundation plan, basement and retaining walls, floor plans, cross sections and details, elevation views, wall bracing or lateral analysis plans, floor and roofing assemblies. Things that are in a permit application continued. The building permit also includes beam calculations, floor and roof truss design details, energy code compliance features such as insulation, building orientation, etc. Architect or engineering stamp for plans over 4,000 square feet or more than 20 feet from finished floor to finished ceiling. If you are trying to get a structural permit, then you must fill out an application for structural permit. Attach the payment and whatever plans you may have to the application before turning it in. You will also need to fill out one of these forms when dealing with plumbing, mechanical, and electrical work. Online permit services. www.buildingpermits.oregon.gov includes applications, payments, intake, review, schedule and track inspections, and permits in process. Fees. Basic fees for permits used to vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. They were typically based on valuation of the project, its size, and the number of individual specialty trade permits required, such as plumbing, electrical, and mechanical, and any other specific taxes or surcharges levied by local government bodies. Oregon Administrative Rule 918-050 requires that all local municipality building programs comply with a uniform fee methodology created by the State of Oregon and was effective 1/1/2009. Drawings, blueprints. You can develop your own drawings, and you can use local and state building codes or other local ordinances to find the requirements for submitting drawings for a permit. Drawings must be legible and must contain the information mentioned above, including cross-sections, framing details, roofing details, trusses or stick, and load paths. You need cross-sections for your footings, showing reinforcing bar width, height, mono, or two-pour, and the strength of the concrete after 28 days. You will also need details on walls, showing studs, their sizes, their on-center spread, top and bottom plates, nailing patterns, header and trimmer details, drywall and siding or subsiding. Remember, if your project is complex enough, you may need an engineer or an architect involved. If your project is more than 20 feet from the finished floor on the bottom to the finished ceiling on the top floor, you're going to need an architect or an engineer's stamp on those prints. Other triggers for an engineer or architect's involvement may include height and depth of retaining walls or foundations, or unusual roof loads and designs. Snow loads and wind loads are some of the specific forces that will act upon the structure, and are to be accounted for in the blueprints or the building design. Inspections. Your typical job card or permit card is listed in a logical order of events. You'll note that the typical card usually has the statement, "Do not cover before inspection," somewhere. This is a key concept to avoid trouble with the inspector. There are 48-hour time limits for an inspection to take place. Be prepared to work on other details while waiting for a busy inspector. If you've waited your 48 hours, proceed with your work, cover up, but make an attempt to contact the inspector and to provide some means by which he can visually confirm, such as leaving some kind of an opening or leaving off a sheet of plywood. Inspections continued. Here are a few of the key locations that will be covered by the inspector. Footing foundation. This inspection occurs after the forms are set in place and the steel has been properly placed. This inspection will also occur before the concrete has been laid. Concrete slab underfloor. This inspection occurs after all the in-slab underfloor components have been installed, including plumbing and mechanical systems. This inspection also occurs before the concrete, deck, or subfloor has been laid or placed. Plumbing, mechanical, electrical. These inspections are actually rough inspections. This means that the seminal installations must be inspected before the framing inspection can occur. Depending on the county or city you are working in, your inspector may be certified to inspect these two components simultaneously. Framing, masonry. These inspections are made after all of the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical installations have been inspected. However, as we mentioned above, in special occasions, these two inspections can happen simultaneously. However, this inspection cannot occur until after the framing and fire stopping has been installed and must happen before the insulation is installed. Inspections continued. Insulation, vapor barrier. These inspections occur once the insulation and vapor barriers have been installed, but before the wall coverings have been placed. However, attic and underfloor insulation can be inspected if it is visible and easily accessible during the final inspection. The final inspection. This inspection occurs only after all of the above required inspections have been completed. This inspection is in place to ensure that the property is safe, free of fire hazards, no dangerous materials, or shoddy construction that might result in injury, and that the structure is up to code and ready to be inhabited. One recent development made in this process is that all residential structures must have a certificate of occupancy for buildings that required a structural permit following April 1, 2008.
Special inspections. Elevators, boilers, and pressure vessels are permitted and inspected by the Building Code Division. You have to arrange separate inspections for those items if you have them. We have spent a lot of time covering the importance of inspections and the procedures that occur therein, but we have yet to discuss one very important individual that is involved in all of this: you, the contractor. What are a contractor's responsibilities in regard to the inspection process? First, it is the job of the contractor to know when an inspection is scheduled to occur. Second, the contractor must be realistic when making a request for inspection, giving the inspector an appropriate amount of time to respond and the freedom to work within his or her schedule. Third, the contractor must provide all necessary information needed for the inspection. Obviously, the contractor must have sufficient knowledge of the project so that he can properly address any issues or questions that the inspector may have. Fourth, and this should be obvious by now, it is the responsibility of the contractor to follow the building code in the first place. If you don't follow the building codes, not only have you wasted the inspector's time, but you have wasted your own, not to mention the trouble you could get into. Fifth, you have to provide the inspector with reasonable access for them to perform their inspections. Don't lock them out. Provide a key or other instructions that will facilitate their inspection. You don't want to delay the job because you kept the inspector waiting. Lastly, it is the right of the contractor to petition any decisions made by an inspector in regard to code application. If you disagree with the pronouncement made by an inspector, then you can formally oppose that conclusion and try to get it appealed. Remember, contractors can and should petition to have codes changed through the code adoption process if they disagree with them and have a valid argument to support their assertion. Of course, you will not always be able to pass the changes you are proposing, but it never hurts to try.
Stop work orders. One thing you want to avoid as a contractor is a stop work order. A stop work order is issued by building officials and demands that all work on a project must halt immediately. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. When you get a stop work order, you must obey and cease work right away. Failure to do so may result in civil penalties, suspension of your license or permit, or even time spent in court. Building officials are not required to give you any notice before issuing a stop work permit, so stay on your toes and follow the rules. So now that we have established that you don't want to get one of these orders, let's go over some ways you can avoid receiving one. First, make sure you are working with a valid permit. As we discussed earlier, working without a permit is highly discouraged and can result in a world of trouble for you. This is just another way working with a non-valid permit, or none at all, is a dangerous practice. Second, be sure to keep the inspector up to date with any corrections or violation notices you may have received. By keeping the inspector informed, you can avoid any costly miscommunications that may slow or completely stop work. Lastly, be responsible. Follow any laws that apply to your work. Stay in line with code provisions, and follow the plan guidelines and blueprints. Stop work orders continued. Okay, now you know some ways to avoid getting one of these orders. But what if you get one anyway? I mean, you're an honest guy, but mistakes happen, right? Say you overlook something or just plain forget, and you receive one of these notices. Let's go over what you should do to rectify the situation. First, immediately contact whoever issued the stop work order. A stop work order will have the specific conditions pertaining to this particular situation written on it. When work may be resumed and under what circumstances, for example. But speaking with the sender may help get things cleared up quickly and might make you look like a responsible worker who cares about his job. Certificate of Occupancy. Effective 4/1/2008, a uniform certificate of occupancy was established for all new residential structures, for which a structural permit was issued. 2007 Oregon State Legislature passed House Bill 2478, which authorized the Building Codes Division to adopt rules establishing uniform certificate of occupancy requirements. A committee reviewed the proposed rules, and a notice of permanent rule-making was filed with the Secretary of State. House Bill 2478 led to the establishment of a format and form for building departments to use in developing their certificate of occupancy. Certificate of Occupancy continued. The new format of the Certificate of Occupancy is to include A. Building permit number. B. Address of the structure. C. Name and address of the owner of the structure. D. Description of the work. E. Statement that the residence has been built to residential specialty code. F. Name of the local building official. G. Any special conditions of the building. Certificate of Occupancy continued. The new format of the Certificate of Occupancy is to also include H. License and contact information for the following individuals who have performed work on the structure. 1. The general contractor. 2. The electrical contractor. 3. The plumbing contractor. 4. The HVAC contractor. The builder or general contractor must provide the preceding information before the Certificate of Occupancy can be issued. Revocation. The building official can revoke the Certificate of Occupancy or the temporary Certificate of Occupancy of the residential structure or townhouse if it is in violation of applicable law that poses a threat to health and safety. The reasons for this revocation must be in writing and must state the basis of revocation of the certificate of occupancy.